Okay, everybody, welcome back to PTSD Studios. And today we have a guest who probably has one of the ickiest, probably the ickiest job that you could get as an elected official. There's a lot of interesting jobs out there, but yours is very, very unique for an elected official.
Agreed.
So, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us what you do.
Sure. My name is Jimmy Roberts. Legal name is James Roberts, but I go by Jimmy unless I owe you money. I am the current coroner in Bingham County, Idaho. And I've been in this position. I started with the office in 2021, was appointed to the position of coroner in 2022, and then elected as coroner in 2022 as well. I'm running for re-election. My intention is to do one more term, and part of my reasoning for number one, I believe in term limits for everybody. I think that there's always somebody next in line that can help change things and bring them to another level. And at the end of my next term, I'll be 64, so I will go back into retirement and start to do some more of the things that I really want to do with my spare time.
I love it. I've tried to retire since 2008, and I'm probably the least successful retiree you'll ever meet because I'm always so busy. So, with yours on this, there's a lot of misconceptions about what a coroner is and what a coroner does. Some people think that the coroners and the medical examiners are synonymous.
Correct. Right.
And some people. Well, there's a lot of misconceptions. So can you give us a brief kind of just what a coroner is, what they do?
So I can tell you what I believe the coroner was based on my childhood. I grew up watching, Adam 12, Squad 51, and I watched Quincy, medical examiner, right?
Right.
And he was referred to as a coroner. He worked for the LA County Coroner's Office. And I assumed as a young person that, well, every coroner was a physician.
Right.
And that every death was investigated with the same vitality that Jack Klugman brought to that position.
Right.
And I became an EMT, quickly learned that I needed to become a paramedic if I was going to affect significant change in my patients' well-being, and really loved that job. I had been working as a paramedic for a number of years, fireman, paramedic, and in career departments in some very populous areas. So I had a lot of experience, and I was always looking for more. I'm one of those guys that once I have it, I'm afraid I'm going to lose it, so I'm constantly sharpening that pencil.
Right.
I take every class I can take. I became an instructor in a paramedic program because the instructors that were there were not necessarily focused on passing, or not passing, but not necessarily focused on supporting the people that were going to go out in the field and do it. They were more interested in their ego and being seen as somebody that knows all.
Right.
Through that experience, I really enjoyed my services as a fireman and a paramedic because I'm constantly helping people. How can that be bad? Right? There could be horrible situations, horrible weather, environmental conditions, but when you show up, you're there to help somebody. And there's a really good feeling about that to me. And at any rate, in 2004, my dad, who was a Marine Corps veteran, he was in 68 to 70, served during Vietnam. He was the victim of a homicide in a remote area of Idaho where he lived. And the person that had killed him set the scene up as if it was a suicide. The responding coroner to that case was very new at the job, hadn't had any training, and I'll talk a little bit more about the qualifications for coroner in Idaho to explain that. But initially was going to rule that death a suicide. There's a deceased individual, there's a weapon. The person who discovered the person said, oh yes, he killed himself, and expanded on a story as to why that was. One of the first responders from EMS in that area happened to know my father, but he also happened to know a lot about firearms. right? A lot of people in Idaho, you hunt, you target shoot. Firearms are a tool that we use every day for a number of reasons. And he protested so vehemently to this new coroner that the coroner acquiesced and invited the Idaho State Police in to help assist in the investigation. Without his protest, without his presence on that scene, if a case is deemed a suicide early on, there is no evidence collection.
Right.
You lose a lot of potential evidence from the scene. Things get missed. So it took about 4 years to get a conviction. I learned a little bit about the judicial system in the state of Idaho during that time. The coroner, when I met with the coroner, essentially I was being sold. Nobody wants to admit that their loved one might have killed themselves.
Right.
And even though they had initiated a deeper investigation, at that point, the way it was conveyed to me, and this is probably 3 or 4 days after the incident, because once I got word, I was living on the East Coast. Of course, I flew out because I wanted to talk to the people involved. I wanted to see what was going on, and it really struck me that this coroner wasn't an EMT, wasn't a paramedic, wasn't a doctor, a nurse, had never worked in the medical field. And that's when I discovered that to be a coroner in the state of Idaho, you need to be 21 years of age and to live in the county in which you want to run for office. There's no requirement for a high school diploma. There is no requirement for any other training to run for the office of coroner.
Wow, that's amazing, because even in Idaho, to be a sheriff, you have to go through a class after you're elected.
After you're elected.
But you don't have to, and it's the same basic requirements.
Right. So with the sheriff, and this is interesting, and this is part of my advocacy that I work on several committees within the state, is that now the sheriff can become a sheriff without being a law enforcement officer prior to.
Right.
But to conduct the business of the sheriff's department, your officers, the ones that enforce the law, must be post-certified, right? If you were going to hire somebody as a home health aide or a caregiver in your home, certified nurse's aide, to essentially do personal care, right? Hygiene care, things like that. You have to be certified to do that.
Right.
Being an EMT, you have to be certified to be a paramedic. To have a system where it is not required to have a certification, which I believe should be a basic minimum.
Right.
I think it is a detriment not only to our community, but absolutely to our public health systems, because the work of and we'll talk more about it, but the work that we do in the coroner system, all of the information that comes off a death certificate, let's say, there's about 44 different government agencies that use the data from those death certificates to drive legislation, resources, public health issues, product. If we have a bad product and changing products, if we're identifying that, oh wow, people are dying of this and this product is always involved, right? So that drives product changes as well. And most people don't realize that.
Well, with what we do, primarily we take veterans, first responders who have PTSD or physical disabilities, and we get them diving. We also have extended programs where we've got hyperbarics for people who don't want to dive and never will dive. And then once people are done with the basic initial training, we need to have something for them to do. So we have an environmental cleanup program to take out physical trash.
Yeah.
And then the other part, and this is where we interact with coroners a lot, is our search and recovery, which is how you and I met.
Correct.
And I pulled a lot of people out. The year we met, I pulled out. Well, I found 3, pulled out 2. And then the next year was 4. And 2 of those were water, 2 of those were land. And it is amazing the difference between coroners in different counties and different locations. Because I was in different states, in different counties. Yeah. 2 of them, yeah. I don't think any of them were within 100 miles of where we are right now. And as we go through this, we really want to stop as many of the suicides as we can. We, as veterans and first responders, the numbers are ridiculous how high our percentage is. And so I go through and I look at the statistics as often as I can to find out as much as I can. And obviously the coroner's reports are the primary source of data for that. And I think the numbers are higher than reported for a lot of reasons.
Agreed. And
that makes it really hard. But from an Idaho standpoint, the information I pulled out as of 3 weeks ago when we had another first responder suicide, Idaho in 2024 were about a little over half of 1% of the population of the country. And we were 1% of the 1% of the first responder suicides in the nation. 2025, we were at 3% of the first responder suicides in the nation. As of the suicide 3 weeks ago, we met 2024's numbers plus 2025's numbers. And we're just in April. So that's its own. I don't know why Idaho has that devious distinction.
Idaho is always ranked, and in the years that I've been looking at coroner systems and medical legal death investigation systems, Idaho is always ranked in the top 10, always, for suicides, and not necessarily just on veterans' side, but suicides in general. So we've always been in the top 10. Wyoming is up there in numbers, certainly Alaska. Our sort of the perfect storm is a Native American veteran. Their numbers are astronomical. I mean, they're way off the charts.
Yeah, and so from the data that I get, the majority of suicides are with firearms. And then when we break that down in demographic, you're right, Native American veterans with firearms, huge percentage right there. And so Idaho, we have several reservations with relatively high populations, but more also from a military standpoint, we have a very low population percentage when you compare us to like California, Texas, Florida, because those are where the big military bases are, and people retire and they stay in those areas. So obviously you're going to have spikes there, but with our relatively low percentage of veterans to our population, the numbers seem to be pretty high there too, not just the first responders, but over on the veteran side.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. And when I first became a deputy coroner in Bingham County, I also was working over in Ada County as a death investigator and assisting in the autopsy suite as essentially a trainee forensic technician. And I would say, and I don't have the exact numbers, of course, but the number of veteran suicides in that particular community were astronomical. It was really sobering to me to really week after week, and sometime day after day, that you're contending with that. So I sit on the Community Suicide Prevention Board, which is based in Idaho Falls. They do a lot of outreach. They do, I don't know if you're familiar with them, they do some really good survivor work, maintaining communication and contact with survivors and their families. And I also sit on the Fort Hall Chauvin Zero Suicide Collective Board. And what we do in a lot of these meetings is we try and identify risk factors, right? So in suicides, one of the most important things, and I don't think people really understand it, There's something that my mentor is Brett Harding. He's the chief deputy in Ada County. He's been doing this almost 4 decades. He is, to me, he's the top of the pile in the forensics world. And he has worked with a group for a number of years where they do essentially psychological autopsies around individuals that are suspected suicides or are confirmed suicides. And the interviews that we conduct, we try to conduct them with family, friends, significant others, coworkers. And what we're doing is we're trying to collect as much information about the circumstances leading up to that event as possible to see if we can't identify where we might have kind of turned that vehicle from going off the road. It's a lot. It's very time consuming, but it's incredibly important also. So where a family might, and nobody wants to think that their loved one was so desperate that they were in such a position that they thought that making that one decision was the best that they could do. You know, the best thing that they could do for themselves. And oftentimes, if there's literature from the decedent, that they thought it was the best that they could do for the families and their loved ones. Right? And that's where it's really tragic to stand next to somebody and love somebody all day long. I know I just hit that.
You got it. It wasn't too bad. For everybody watching, these are in-ear monitors, so I can actually hear the sound that you're going to hear.
But to think that someone might not feel comfortable enough to come to you with some really terrible thoughts and ideas, that hurts, and it hurts long term. You know, and there's no, to me, there's no getting over that. Our family has suffered with suicides, and it doesn't, the questions do not leave you.
No, they never do. Well, you know, from my standpoint, you know, we had that recovery. It was New Year's Day, and then right after I lost my brother, which was the hardest day of my life. And then right after, almost a month to the day I lost my brother, our administrator for our foundation lost her husband to suicide. Then I pulled that kid out of the water, or found him across the state. A couple months later, we had another suicide from one of our first responders on this side of the state. And then pulled another kid out. And then we went through 3 more suicides before the calendar year 2024 had ended. And, you know, part of that is working with this group. I mean, if you're working with veterans and first responders, suicide is unfortunately something that we see all the time. But what we're finding as we're looking at this stuff, and the more data we're seeing come across from our standpoint, is we don't think those numbers that are reported are accurate at all.
Agreed.
Do you have just a gut feeling of what the real numbers might be?
I don't know that I would have a gut feeling, but when I go through the process of making a determination on manner of death, right? So there's 2 different things that have to be determined. One is cause, and there's a million different things that can cause someone's death. You know, every infection, every medical problem, every injury, those are all causes of death. Manners of death that are accepted in our society today are a natural death, a suicide, a homicide, a accident, or an undetermined, meaning that we can't determine 51% this way over 49% that way. And sometimes that's competing medical issues that can cause that. Sometimes that's competing toxicology levels and medical issues. And we probably have 3 or 4 undetermined cases per year, which is about normal if you look at the statistics on good death investigation systems. And it's not a loss to say that something is undetermined. It's admitting the fact that we don't have enough evidence at that moment to rule one way or another. And all of our cases, none of our cases are ever 100% closed. Even when I sign a death certificate and we quote, close the case. If more information were to become available in the future, or technology were to change and evidence was retested that would lead us to another conclusion, there is a process to go through where you can make an adjustment on a death certificate. So it is not something that's in stone.
Right.
I follow the National Association of Medical Examiners has a manual on how do you determine a manner of death. And it reflects a number of different scenarios. It talks about mindset and thinking and research. And normally, to determine someone's death as a suicide, they prefer to have about a 70% probability that it is a suicide. And in the process of that, if you're identifying things that the decedent may have done to remove safety measures leading up to their death, right? There's only about 35% of suicides currently that a note or a social media post or a blog is identified. I think there's probably more messages out there than we discover because there's so many mediums for somebody to put their thoughts on today.
Well, I share an example. So one of the suicides I dealt with, we looked for a suicide note everywhere and searched, I'd say 3 or 4, maybe even 5 people, searched the same spot at least 3 times. And I'm really good at finding stuff like that. And then, I don't know, 6 months into it, the suicide note popped up. Right where I had checked, right where other people had checked. And looking at it, it was definitely not a forged suicide note. It was definitely his. But that, I understand that. That's a hard part because things like that pop up, and especially when you're grieving.
Right.
You can miss stuff like that so easily.
Right. Well, in the past, there have been cases where a decedent may have been found, and it would be obviously suicide. And because of prejudice, because of influence, outside influence on what people might think, what people might say, what people might do, where we might show up on a scene and clearly there has been some level of cleanup that has taken place.
Right.
Right. And then you've got to determine, and we work very closely with our joint detective unit. I'm so grateful for the relationship that we have, is that we work really closely together so that we're looking at it from all angles. If you ever work a scene with me, I am constantly talking about exactly what I'm doing so that everybody knows why I'm doing what I'm doing and how it works, so that at 3 o'clock in the morning, if I don't do that procedure, I've got an officer saying, "Hey, Jimmy, don't you always do that, right?" Right? And I just presented at the down in New Orleans in February at the American Academy of Forensic Sciences on essentially staged or clandestine homicides. Specifically there, it was for intimate partner violence, where somebody's died and whomever was involved in that death tried to make it look like an overdose. Right, or a natural death, or a suicide. So determining between suicide and homicide, you don't get any closer than that.
Right.
And every single death has to be approached as if it's a homicide first, so that you're not missing things. Right? And if you whittle things away, and okay, this isn't a homicide, then what is it?
Right.
Is it an accident? Is it a suicide? What are the factors involved there?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to cause of death from suicides, the firearms, huge percentage.
Yes.
And when you look at veterans and first responders, most of us have guns.
Access, knowledge.
Access and knowledge, right?
Right.
And so certainly that could be a contributing factor to it. Also the stuff that we see. And from the suicide standpoint, you, me, anybody, that one call, that one experience can break us and push us over the edge. We can see the most horrific things 1,000, 10,000 times, but it's the one. And for me, when I have a PTSD nightmare wake up, none of the things that I've ever seen, pulling bodies out of the water, military stuff, combat scenes. I was in Iraq, but a kid got boiling goat milk spilled all over him. Just blisters everywhere, skin was coming off.
Yeah.
I wake up in cold sweats to that.
Yep.
That was mine. That pushed me over the edge from none of the stuff ever bothering me to having PTSD because of it.
Sure.
And so I also see from the coroner's offices as well, a lot of you guys have either previous law enforcement, previous EMT, firefighter, or military experience. It kind of,
right.
I don't know that I've ever actually met a coroner that doesn't have at least some of that going in there.
There are some out there.
Yeah. I think we actually may have one fairly close to us. Education, perfect education for that coroner, but I don't know of a lot of other stuff they've faced. But from that standpoint, do you see high risk factors for the coroners and coroner staff?
So, unfortunately, we had a coroner who completed suicide here in Idaho a few years ago. Our job is tough, right? There are some people who would call us the last responders, right? I'm not sure how I feel about that exactly, but people are going to put labels on things whether you like it or not. In my mid-20s, I joined the United States Navy and became a corpsman assigned to the Marine Corps. Part of that was because knowing my dad had been in the Marine Corps and wanting to use my skills as a medic. And so I've had really close relationships with a lot of veterans. And the one thing that I see with them is there's a reason that they put their hand up, right? They put their hand up to swear to uphold and defend. And they do it at their own peril. And they may be thinking of their own peril in that moment. They put their hand up of the moment on the battlefield or the moment in some specific mission that's going to, increase our safety and security. What they don't realize in that moment is between those moments, they're filled with situations like what you experienced, right? I worked as a paramedic for 34 years. I worked in Jersey City, New Jersey. I responded to the World Trade Center and did the recovery work there. I was working with a SWAT team as a medic contingent the night that they caught the Boston bomber. We were in Watertown. We were not at the shooting scene, I'm proud to admit, but we were there. And all of those guys, they carry it. Right. And you carry it forever. And like what you experienced, when I left my job and didn't have that job to go to any longer, within about a couple of months, I started having what I call working dreams. So I don't have the next case to go on, I didn't have the next call, and all of a sudden I started having dreams where literally every time I went to sleep, I'm either working the pile, a building fire, a cardiac arrest, a child death, something, and I would wake up exhausted. Yeah. And I'm like, what is going on? And I finally reached out to a couple of fellows that I had worked with who had been retired a little longer. And I took a risk. And I'm like, hey man, you got anything like this going on? And they're like, oh yeah. Yeah, we forgot to tell you about that.
These are jobs not everybody can do. So, in this...
And I don't think I answered your question, but if you want to say it again, I'll try to focus.
Oh, no, we can go on. So, that first call where you and I went out together, there were 6 of us on the water that day for that recovery. One of them was my son. Yeah. So the 4 left. One was a search and recovery diver, been doing it for a very long time. One guy was a fisherman who knew the waters well. One guy was operating the little underwater drone thing. And then the other guy was our navigator. And out of that particular case was super weird because that person had been in the water a month. And when he came out, looked like he'd been in there for hours. Just a perfect storm of conditions, water temperature, all those sorts of things, lack of predators. And, but talking to everybody about it, and I've kept touch with them. Every so often I talk and say, hey, are you having any issues? Do you need to talk? Do you need to talk to me, to someone else? It doesn't matter. Just making sure that they're okay. One person out of that 6 had never dealt with that before. And that was, for water recovery, nothing comes close to being that clean as that particular one.
Agreed.
But there was a light smell. And that messed him up. I talked to him more than, well, my son obviously, but from everybody else, I talked to that one guy more than anybody. And it pushed him past that break point. And yeah, you don't know what it is. You don't know what's going to happen or what that break point is going to be. But most of us, we can't say no. I mean, that was terrible. That was New Year's Eve on New Year's Day. I mean, your truck started to get water up the tires by the time. Oh, man.
I was nervous. The further I went out to meet you guys, I was like, oh, we need to get things up and let's go.
Yeah. That
was rough conditions.
We did $6,000-7,000 damage in equipment that day. Just those conditions. But we also knew that was our only chance.
There was only a small window.
Yeah. Let's actually talk about politics a little bit.
Oh boy.
Interagency communication and politics.
Yeah.
So, don't say anything that's going to get you tied up with anybody else. But on that one, day before I'm out there, I've got the dog teams working because I knew I had 48 hours at the most. So cadaver dogs, they can smell through water. They do very, very well. And so while everybody else is doing stuff, I wound up kind of leading the whole group. And I just made sure that everybody left the dog handlers alone, got them on their boat. And while all this is going on, there's hundreds of volunteers, people everywhere.
Sure.
Deputy comes up to me and says, okay, so if you find him, leave him. Call us, we'll come recover him. And I was like, well, first off, no. Once I have hands on somebody, if I can physically pull them out, there's nothing that's going to stop me. Do whatever you want. So next day, patrol sergeant shows up. Once we had made the recovery, I'd made the call to the previous deputy on his cell phone because I did not want it to go out to dispatch until we hand it off to you.
Gotcha.
Because, and once we made that recovery, once that the victim was on the boat, we came to shore. We had one person guarding the boat, and we let the patrol deputy on the boat to take pictures. Nobody else went near it until you showed up. So everybody's grateful. We had a really good experience when you guys showed up. The next day, I got a call from somebody, and it was from the Bingham County Courthouse. And I thought they said they were the sheriff, but I'm not sure because the person on the phone was raging and yelling at me. And what it was we desecrated human remains. We didn't let the deputies pull them out. That day, when you pulled in, your tires were dry. And by the time you were loaded, which was a short period of time, the water was about that far up your tires. The ice sheet was moving in fast.
Correct.
If we didn't pull that victim out, it would have been gone. Because that ice sheet didn't clear until the end of March. So that is something that we fight as well, doing this kind of work. Do you see that not necessarily with what you do here in our county, but with other coroners?
So, number one, I would be surprised. I would be very surprised if the person that had that conversation with you was the sheriff. I've known Sheriff Gardner for a long time, and I've seen him in a lot of different situations.
That was before Gardner.
No, he was here as a sheriff at that point.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yeah, totally positive. And that is just not the demeanor that I would see from him. But there's a lot of people in the sheriff's department. Right. And a lot of the people that enter our field Unfortunately, what comes with some people entering our field is a level of ego that instead of addressing an issue to resolve it, to make sure that we're working better in the future, it becomes, you know, I'm bigger than you are kind of stuff.
Right.
In terms of jurisdictional things, I am proud and feel great at the work that I do with our joint detective unit and our law enforcement, in that they had a tough job before I came to the coroner's office, right?
Right.
And I'm sure you've already alluded to it a couple of times, but not every coroner is the same.
Right.
Not every coroner meets or attempts to meet a standard. So in some counties and in some jurisdictions where they don't have, some coroners don't even go out to calls.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? And they just have a phone conversation maybe with somebody on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing that, some law enforcement officers in the past have had to fill that gap because there was nobody there. And I'm grateful that the work that we've done to streamline that, identify jurisdiction, roles, responsibilities, how do we do this together? The coroner's office must be a completely separate, independent investigative agency to have credibility of what is ultimately becomes the identity of the individual, the cause and the manner of death and the time of death.
Right.
I am aware of other jurisdictions where they won't even allow their coroner to approach or come onto a scene. And I can only hear it from them on why they believe that. But what that does to me is it identifies that the work isn't done yet. Mm-hmm. We need to be working on this from every angle to improve that. Because if you have a practitioner that's in public office that is not meeting the standard, the statutory requirements of the position, and they're not meeting the goals of their community, then we've got to make an adjustment. You know, we've got to make a change. And, you know, some communities would say, you know, well, it's always been like this. We don't need anything to change. Matter of fact, I heard somebody say in a public meeting once, we've never missed a homicide. And my question would be, how would you know?
How would you know?
How would you know?
Yeah.
If you haven't had the training, if you don't constantly do the work, if you don't constantly try to improve yourself, how would you know? You don't. So I don't know if you're aware of it. I don't think you and I have had conversations about it, but in 2023, a number of legislators requested that the Office of Performance Evaluation do an assessment of the coroner system. And the Office of Performance Evaluation is an independent agency within the state, and they look at processes and procedures of government agencies, and they try to identify whether they're efficient, effective, or not. And when they did their study and published it in 2024, they ranked Idaho as 49th in the nation overall for quality and consistency of death investigations, including autopsy rate. And we were ranked 51st in the nation, so that means our territories came before us in infant and child death investigation and autopsy rate. Right? So, and I've heard people in our field say, well, that's not true. These guys are independent investigators, right? This is what they do for work. It's nothing personal. It's no effect on your ego. These are the facts.
Right.
And I took that 95-page report and I asked a number of Idaho State University grad students to come help me. And we dug through every best practice law statute in the country and prepared that draft for the legislative committee so that we could make some changes. And we were successful in making some changes in deaths that would be reported to the coroner, but we also started to add some pieces. Previously it said the coroner would have to attend, quote, a coroner school in their first year of office, but it didn't define what that was. And it doesn't actually say that you have to pass it. or get certified, right? So we're melting an iceberg with a blow dryer, and we need people that are going to keep that conversation alive to make those changes in it. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
Well, the answers to the questions, they kind of drift. I mean, and it doesn't, not just with you, but with everybody. And that's fine. You know, we definitely want to hear everybody's perspective on how this stuff falls and how this stuff works.
Yeah.
So not a lot, again, from when we started, a lot of people misunderstand what the coroner is.
Yeah.
So the medical examiner does the autopsies.
So there are two different systems. There's a coroner system, well, really three. The coroner system, a medical examiner system, and then a combination of the two. The state of Idaho only has a coroner system. The people that do autopsies for us, and this is based on the state statute that we recently changed, has to be a forensic pathologist.
Okay.
So a forensic pathologist is a physician that's gone through all of medical school, they've done their residency, and then they do another period of residency, and then another specialty. The head forensic pathologist in Ada County happens to be our neuropathologist, right? So it takes an incredible amount of time to become that level of expertise. And those pathologists, there's three of them who are top notch, they work under the Ada County coroner. They have the Forensic Pathology Center. We contract with them for our pathology services. And they have very specific basic requirements that have to be provided before they will agree to do an autopsy. There are jurisdictions in this state who have been put on notice and said that they would not take autopsies from their community because they're not doing death investigations. And an autopsy is only as good as the scene and circumstantial evidence that should be provided with that decedent at time of autopsy. The difference between a suicide and a homicide, it doesn't have anything, well, it does have partially something to do with the autopsy, but most of that's determined by an appropriate scene investigation.
Right.
And it can't be done any other way. So in a medical examiner system, you have a physician who is in charge of an office, essentially acts as a manager for an office. They might have forensic pathologists that work under them. And some medical examiners' offices do hire medical legal death investigators. And the American Board of Medical Legal Death Investigators is the only certifying national standard group in the United States that's recognized. I happen to be certified with them as a death investigator. And there are some medical examiners' offices that don't. And they rely on law enforcement to call them from the scene and say yay or nay. So to say a medical examiner system is better because a doctor manages it it's not truthful.
Sure.
You can have good and bad in either court.
Yeah. Well, and you know, from my perspective, when I find somebody where we always want to cordon off the scene as much as we can. If it's water, we do what we can, but we destroy a lot of evidence pulling somebody out of the water if it's a crime scene.
Right. Well, one of the beautiful things that you guys had done in that specific recovery is using that aquatic drone. That aquatic drone and the footage from that drone was so valuable for not only myself, but also for the forensic pathologist to view, to see. We want to see a decedent, what's called in situ, in place, undisturbed. No, nothing's been contaminating. What exactly are we looking at there? And that was invaluable. It was really great.
Well, and I remember too, I think it was you who called me about an abrasion around the waist.
Yes, yes.
And I could say that was because when we recovered, pulled him onto the boat, and we pulled him straight into a body bag, we grabbed onto the belt. And that was to prevent damage to the body. And it was also easy to grip. So, yeah, there's all kinds of crazy stuff like that happens. You know, every scene is different. I've been to so many over the years. I only went to one that was like, oh yeah, that's a homicide. Duh. The rest of them, I mean, how do you know? I mean, even that one you were just talking about. Somebody that was there may have forced him into the water, may have shot him. Any number of things could have happened.
Sure.
And after a month, normally there's not even anything close to being reasonable for evidence with what we have to do on our end. But yeah, we always try and preserve that. So let's go through kind of the process. So if so somebody in hospice, something like that, you're not going to do an autopsy.
So, I mean, that you bring up a really interesting point, in that normally somebody in hospice is under the care of a doctor.
Right.
A doctor in the state of Idaho can only sign a death certificate if the person died of a natural disease process.
Okay.
That's it. Natural.
So I go in, I have surgery, I die on the operating table. Doctor can sign off on that, or does that have to go to a coroner?
Well, it depends on how you got there. If you came into the hospital unresponsive and you didn't regain responsiveness until that moment that you died, then the coroner's office has to be notified. If you die within the first 24 hours of admission to a hospital, the coroner's office has to be notified.
Okay.
So that we can identify those cases. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that was something that I didn't know, because I'm not in a sling, but I'm just about 6 weeks post-op on shoulder surgery.
Yeah, I've had 3 of those.
Yeah,
They're awesome.
So I was thinking, I actually thought about that before you came in here. So they put you under for that one. And so if I had died, because you can die under general easily. So if I had died, since I would have been in, because I was released probably 3 hours after the surgery was complete. So at that point, if I had died, they would have called you.
They would have, by state statute, they would have needed to call us. And the hospice piece is interesting, because I've had at least a handful of hospice deaths in our community where, for whatever reason, somebody picked up the phone and called 911. Right? I know that our hospice agencies are great, too. And when they pick up 911 and make the call, we're coming. Even if somebody calls and said, hey, it's a false alarm, this is hospice, the phone was picked up, we're coming. And we're going to talk to the hospice care providers, and we're going to talk to them about, who's signing the death certificate, what are they signing it as. In 2 of those cases, I discovered that the decedent, although they were dying of a pulmonary disorder that was going to be labeled as natural, they were actually dying of mesothelioma. Oh. Well, mesothelioma is not a naturally occurring disease. That's due to an exposure.
Right.
And because that mistake was made, we were able to do research around that death, identify where the exposure took place, and get the appropriate compensation for those families. So there's always something that kind of falls out of the norm. And when you get a call that seems like, oh yeah, it's super simple, you, by initiating that cognitive bias, by saying, oh, it's just this, or, oh, it's a hospice case, by you reducing your level of acuity in response to that incident, you're doing somebody a disservice.
Right.
So.
And talking about that makes me think about some of the veteran suicides and the first responder suicides that I'm 100% sure they were suicides, and sometimes they've been labeled as homicides or death by misadventure or death by accident. And I think the key that we're missing why our numbers are low is not only do we have access to firearms, not only do we understand violence and how to end somebody's life, most of us have an understanding of how to make something look more like a suicide, because there's the insurance side of that, right?
So most insurance companies today, they normally have like a year or 2 year clause. If you walk out and buy an insurance company, and I'm not an insurance agent, I don't play one on TV, I'm not interested in being one, but I appreciate what they do. But most of the policies that are out there have a clause that if somebody were to die by suicide in X number of months after signing this, they're not covered. But beyond that, right, they are. It's a full policy.
Right.
So there has been a misconception that if somebody dies by suicide, complete suicide, that they might not have any compensation for their family at all. That's something you should talk to your insurance advisor on, somebody who's an expert and who knows. But if you're going there to have that conversation, somebody should also ask you, hey, what's up, man? What can we do to help you?
You know, and we don't have a ton of time left, but I know this is making me mental.
Yeah.
So on these videos, what's going to happen is on certain platforms, these are going to be metered back because we've said suicide so many times.
Sure.
We have to stop the stigma of talking about this.
100%.
Nobody has ever committed suicide because if I went up to you and say, hey, Jimmy, I'm worried about you. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
Right.
I'm not giving you the idea. You've already had it.
That is a misconception. Mm-hmm. To bring up the idea of something is 100% misconception on your approach to trying to prevent suicide. 100%.
Yep. And when we're dealing with our group, our people, first responders, veterans, we also tend to be a more macho bunch. We're a field dominated by men. There are women.
There are some egos out there.
Most of us don't ask for help. People have been bringing that up to me recently, that I don't ask for help, even when they know I need it. But that's not just me. That is this community. Mm-hmm. And with suicides, we have to police ourselves. We have to take care of each other.
We do. And so I was asked recently whether or not somebody has ever tried to influence decisions that I've made on my job. Mm-hmm. And I would be amiss to say that I hadn't had that experience, because I have. And usually that attempted influence, they believe they're acting in a noble fashion for somebody's benefit somewhere. Right. And my first response to it is to have somebody ask me to essentially falsify a document is fraud.
Right.
And I'm not doing it. I'm not giving up my integrity or my values or my family over an elected position. It's not going to happen. The other thing that gets lost when people make changes, when they put something that they know is not true down on a document, they are misleading not only the community, but all of the people that use that data. And we are missing suicides, 100%. And we have to identify those risk factors. And I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but some of the recent research that I had looked at revealed that if somebody commits suicide in, let's say, a family home of 5, the individuals closest to that person are 4 times more likely to die within the next 18 months, be it from a medical disorder or a completed suicide. So that means we have people to save. We have work to do to shore them up, to help them. Personally, myself, I sought counseling early in my career because I knew that I needed to. I couldn't bring the stuff that I see home. I needed a place where I could bounce it off somebody, and I still do that. I mean, we're talking, I'm 59 years old. I started this career when I was 19, so we're talking 40 years. And I still use that because I need to use that.
Yeah.
You know, I need to have somebody that is okay with me telling them that, man, I don't like what's going on right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, there's, you know, and we segregate ourselves out.
Sure.
And it's really interesting to see because, you know, I've gone to funerals, I've gone to parties, different things where you have cops and you have firefighters and EMTs. They kind of stay together. And then you have your veterans or your active duty. And we just...
Your silos.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And we need to, again, as a group, we need to get past some of that. Because I think the most difficult thing for people who don't come from these fields is you have no idea what it's like to be us. And nothing we say or do can tell you. I had a brother call me right after he was able to make phone calls from basic training and said, why didn't you tell me what this was going to be like? And my response, I was just like, I was dumbfounded at first. Yeah. And I said, okay, what could I have told you?
Yeah.
And then he went silent and said, oh, I guess there's nothing I could have said. Same thing with a coroner. You can't explain to me what your job's like. A firefighter. I've never been a firefighter. I did a little cop time, but I was writing parking tickets at a university. It was intense as that job was. But I think we're missing a lot of suicides, reported suicides, when it comes to this group. Again, because one that I knew was not a suicide that people were saying was, guy drove his car into the water. He was a firefighter. Guy was terrified of the water. That would not be the way he would complete a suicide.
Right, and there are ways, if you're doing a really good death investigation, there are ways that you can identify the removal of safety factors, right? The risk-taking behavior, and you've got to look at all those things and add them up and look at the totality of circumstances, right? Yeah, I know that we're running short on time. One piece of research that I've discovered recently, because I sit on those 2 suicide boards, is that a number of veterans that are completing suicide are not necessarily the frontline combat veterans. They're the veterans that, for whatever reason, because of their MOS, because of their whatever mission or action they happen to be on, they were not engaged directly in combat operations. And when I've talked to some of those members, they feel like they did not live up to what they spent all this time training for.
Right.
And they feel left out. They're part of that group all day long. They went through it all, right? We smelled the same things, we've done the same things, we felt all of those things. But for whatever reason, it would be like a fireman working all your life to just go to one fire and put it out.
Right.
And you never have that opportunity. And you see that depression in search dogs, right? So that's why training is done with search dogs.
Right.
That dog will get depressed if he doesn't actually get a hit.
Yeah. Recovery divers most have average to a half a find in a career. And I think the reason some of us are more successful in these endeavors than others is the bigger nerd you are when it comes to, picking at the details, which is some of the things you have to do, the more successful you're going to be. 90% of the work that I do is at a computer or on the phone.
Oh man, what's called, if you've ever read, the book that I was told to read when I became a paramedic was The House of God. And it was based on a hospital in Boston and residency. And within that, it taught me a lot about what goes on in that field. And there's one book that I want to bring up, and I want it for your audience as well, there's a gentleman by the name of Lawrence Gonzalez who wrote a book called Deep Survival. And I probably listen to that book on Audible at least once a year. And he talks about all these people that train hard, in survival and combat and things like that. Why is it that in some situations they die and a 4-year-old child survives a night in an exposure environment, right? And talking about the amygdala and the frontal lobe and the hippocampus and the decision making that we have, it's incredibly important. I would encourage you to.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that.
Sorry.
Oh, and before we have to go, the one thing I want to really kind of push out there to everybody is, I think one of the reasons our suicide rates are reported low is the stuff that we do recreationally. But we're out hunting, we're out fishing, riding vehicles outdoors. The stuff that I do, I should have been dead 100 times over. Another running joke, aside from technology hating me, is that I might be immortal. Because there are so many times I should have been killed with people right next to me. It's like, how did you live through that? Well, jumping in ice cold water on December 31st.
Right, so survivor's guilt. The entire time that I worked at the World Trade Center, I would go back to the firehouse at the end of the day on 29th and 2nd Avenue, and the families would be there, and they would, Jimmy, did you find him? What did you see? You got to get back down there. I know that you're going to be able to find him. And it was heartbreaking to talk with those family members. But I don't even know where I was going with that.
You know, and that happens a lot too.
Yeah.
So aside from this, the conversation with people running for office or incumbents was just
Well, that was it. Why am I here and they're not?
oh yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Because I can name off things from my friends that have died. Matter of fact, yesterday was the anniversary of one of my friends' death. He was out on a search warrant.
Yeah.
Young guy, young wife, you know, beautiful career in front of him, great guy. Why was it Sean?
Yeah.
Why wasn't it me? Right? And what I do with that is I believe that my God has some work for me to do. And it's my responsibility to not only carry on what that work is, but to carry on the memory of that person that did die.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, I was just going to say that most of these stories that I do, the PTSD stories where I'm actually talking to veterans and first responders, the survivor guilt, I would say 90% of the people that I talk to, that the survival guilt is there, and it's a big issue. Okay, so anything else you want to share?
No, I hope, I do have an opponent in my race, which is great. It's good for, you know, good government. We want to have people show up. I hope that if anybody has a question about how and why I run our office the way I run our office, I hope that they reach out to me directly, get the information from the source, look at the facts, and please get out and vote.
No, absolutely.
You know? But May 19th is the primary. People can start early voting on May 4th. So please get out and vote.
Okay, and so people can contact you through the Bingham County website. Your email address is there.
Yep, they can contact me through the Bingham County website. They can also contact me through the Eastern Idaho Coroner Coalition.
Okay.
I happen to be a member there. I have flyers, and they can also reach out to me through my personal email at docroberts35@gmail.com.
Okay.
It's not hard to find me. If you need to find me, and you can always write coroner@binghamid.gov, and I'll get that message, and we'll get it figured out for you.
All right, perfect. Okay, so if you are running for office or you're in political office right now and you'd like to do one of these videos, please reach out to Aubrey. Her email address is admin@heroesdivingforthesea.org, and she'll get you set up. So all the stuff we have in here is mobile. I can take it to you, and we can do interviews. We're hopefully by the end of this month we'll have the studio put back together after our little adventure there. So yeah, let's see. Those are the big things. So Jimmy, I really appreciate you coming. It's been great.
Really glad to sit down with you, Kenneth, and I'd be happy to do it again if we want to talk and just zero in on one topic. We covered a lot.
Oh yeah, and I think that'd be fun. And yeah, and for all of our heroes, all of our veterans and first responders, if you want to tell your story, we definitely want to get those recorded and memorialized. I mean, like my grandfather, he was unable to get his done before he passed.
Agreed.
And he had some crazy stuff happen to him. So, all right, we will catch you guys in the next video. Be safe, have fun, and definitely take care of each other.
Great.